Good morning. Good morning. Come on. Good morning. Good morning, Herman. There we go. At least I got to start y'all off awake. Then we'll work down from there. All right. We are in Daniel chapter 3. So if you want to turn there, Daniel chapter 3 be our verses. I'm not going to read all of them because we'll read them at different points in the sermon. It's Daniel chapter 3. But I am going to give you the summary of it all. Daniel chapter 3 starts off like this. Nebuchadnezzar is building a giant statue, 90 feet tall, like 9 feet wide. I mean, it's a huge, huge golden statue. Now, I don't know if it was all gold, but I think it was gold layered. But he did this, and when he did this, his idea was this is going to bring everybody together and unite everybody. But his problem was that he did it for, basically made himself a god. And he told all the people that you must bow down to this idol. And so he tells everybody, matter of fact, he points and says, we're going to make a command. And he said, anytime you hear this music play, everybody's going to bow down and to the idol, or to me, basically is what he's saying. And so this goes on. They play the music, and what happens is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the main characters in this part of the lesson, is they refuse to bow down because they believe in Jesus Christ, or they believe in God. And so because of that, they refuse to bow down. And then someone comes in and tells on them and says, well, your higher-ups, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse to bow down. And so the king, his command said this: either you bow down or you die. He will throw you into the fire. And so he brought him before them, and he says, I'm going to give you one more chance. Bow down before me or face the fire. And this, long story short, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say, no matter what, we trust in God that he will deliver us from either one way or the other. Either we're going to die and join him, or he will pull us out of the fire. And then King Nebuchadnezzar is looking down there. He tosses them in, or has them tossed in. He's looking down in there. He sees them in the fire, and sure enough, God is right beside them and rescues them. That's the summary version. And so what I wanted to bring out in this is, in our world today, I think we have a lot going on. And I think y'all would agree with me that we have 1,000 different voices dumping stuff out of us constantly, telling us what to believe, how we should behave, what to do, and how to act. I mean, if you don't believe me, take a second to get on Facebook, and you'll figure it out. And so my challenge is what do we need to focus on? How do we take all the voices that is thrown out there, and how do we take all this stuff and go, what should I focus on? How should I act? What should I be doing? And I think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do a great job of drawing a line in the sand, if you will. And so now we got through the text there. The decree basically says this: bow or burn. No in between. There's nothing, no compromise by him. It's bow or burn. And most people, the guesstimate is tens of thousands of people gathered around this statue and were bowing to King Nebuchadnezzar's statue. And he's pretty proud of this. And so we see all these voices in our own lives screaming at us saying, bow down, submit to this. You should do this. This is how you live life. This is the right way. I mean, it's just voices and voices and voices that get and keep telling us how to live. And I think we see a great example in these three men of God that refused to worship the idol. They took a stand. And I think from time to time, we're told the same thing: bow, or you're going to be condemned. And we talked about it in our small group this morning about the many ways that we are asked to bow down in this world. And all of them start with compromise. Whether something big or something little, it's always compromise that leads into it. Now, I know that we don't have idols in the sense that they did here. But we do have idols in our life. We have things that we put before God. That's what it means. An idol is simply something that we take and put before God above all else. And the problem is that God says he won't do that. He won't compromise that. It's him, then everything else. And that's kind of where the problem comes in for us and all the world is we're taking things and we're placing it in front of God, and God's going, am I number one? And most of us would say, well, yeah, of course, I believe in you, God. But that doesn't mean he's number one. It just means you acknowledge him. So the question I have is, will we respond like the three Hebrew men? When we're faced with challenges, when we're faced with the adversity, and when we're faced with all the things that people are throwing at us, how will we respond? Will we be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Will we say, no, I believe in God. I will not compromise the integrity of the gospel? In a world where there's 1,000 voices, which one will you follow? Which one will you seek? See, our first point that we see these men make is that they were uncompromising in their dedication. Verses 16 and 17 of chapter 3 says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. That's a lot of courage. I mean, that's a lot of boldness, and that's a lot of commitment. And honestly, I don't know if I would do that. I hope I would, but man, to stand there before a king saying, I'm fixing to throw you in the fiery furnace, I don't know. That gets tough at that moment. But here's what I noticed in the text. These men didn't spend any time talking about it. If you really look at that, what'd they say? No. We know the answer. We know what's going to happen. No, we will not bow. They didn't get together in a huddle and they didn't discuss it. They didn't have a family meeting. They didn't have any of that. They just got together and they asked the question. They said, no, we will not bow before you. I'm sorry. We know that God will prevail. He says, we will serve the Lord our God alone and we will worship only him. Now, I know that sounds easy at this moment because we're not faced with this type of challenge, but I want to give you some encouragement. And I guess maybe I want to put more of a principle out for you. If you make your mind up now, how you will react later in life when someone challenges you or challenges your faith or asks you to compromise your faith, it goes a long ways in the decision you'll make. If you set that now, and I'm using my family as an example because we do this. We have conversations in our house pretty regularly about how we're going to behave and how we're going to act when someone challenges our faith or challenges what we know is right or challenges how we should speak about the gospel. We have those conversations. And so we know that if this situation comes up, here's the response you give. Here's why we give it. There's no question about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's not a discussion. This is how we behave. Because God says this. Because what happens, I've found out in my life, is if I wait to that moment to search for an answer, most times I don't have the answer. And I'll compromise and go, well, okay, it doesn't sound that bad. But if I know I've thought about these things in my life, and I've thought about how idols enter, and I've thought about how things get in the way of God, then I know my answer. Right away, 100% of the time, we're going to say no. We move forward. And I use this example in the first service, and I'll use it with y'all, I guess, too. But some of y'all have kids that went to VBS. And a great thing happened last week, and most of y'all don't know this. But we had a basketball camp, and we had VBS running same time. Usually the coaches are really good about working with us and trying to make sure that we don't do things side by side or right along the same time. But this time it just fell that way. And so the question was, is Levi going to go to camp? Basketball camp, that is. And so the decision was, no, we already knew that answer because we talked about it years ago. It's a no, he goes to VBS. Well, I talked to Coach about it, and I told him, I said, we won't be joining you because told him the reason VBS is going on. And he goes, I didn't know, I'm sorry, I apologize. So something cool happened, though. Monday morning, he calls me and he goes, Herman, I'm just letting you know I'm shutting down camp. I'm going to send all the kids up here because, one, that's more important, and two, a majority of them chose VBS over camp. So I just want to make sure that it's easy decision for everybody. So everybody got to go to church camp or a VBS, and they got to go to basketball camp afterwards. You don't realize how huge that is. That's amazing to me that, one, a majority of the people chose VBS, and two, that a coach would say, you know what, that's more important, so I'm going to go ahead and just shift that. It's all because people made a decision way back here about what's the right thing to do for God. They honored God first, and that's what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did. They knew the decision, they made the decision, and there's no compromise after that. So we need to learn to decide what is the honorable thing to do when it comes to sin and to God. Because sin is, the devil's very sneaky. he approaches this in a way that sounds good, and it sounds honorable, and it sounds, maybe not amazing. It just sounds, that makes sense. I can do that. And the next thing you know, sin has led you down a path that you can't get back from. It's led you away from the church. And so I would encourage you to practice as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did. Start now, make decisions, know where you and your family will stand. An example of that would be, don't we need to honor all religions? This is one I hear quite often from people, is, it's better to be a live coward than a dead hero. Or maybe we need to honor all religions because all religions lead to the same place, don't they, right? And so we start compromising these things, and we start asking questions, and we start allowing those things to come into our life. The next thing you know, we're way over here. We never intend to be over there, but we don't even believe in God for sure anymore. See, what I think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego understood what was happening. They were asked to follow a different religion. Even though Nebuchadnezzar didn't say, hey, idol me as a god, he didn't say bow down to me as a god, he just said bow down to me. They understood right away that this was a compromise that they were unwilling to deal with. Acts chapter 4 says this, he says, judge for yourselves whether it is right in God's sight to obey you rather than God, for we cannot help speak about what we have seen and heard. And I think we need to learn to look at God in our life. Look what he's done. Look what, how he's used us, the people he's put in our life. You take all this stuff and you go, God, are you there? These are the things I've seen. These are the things I heard, and so I will never back off of those. You see, our society's really good, actually, at standing up for what they believe in. But the problem is we're standing up for things that are not balanced with Jesus Christ. We're standing up for all these things that are happening around us, and I'm not saying they're not noble causes. But I am saying that we need to balance those with Jesus Christ and put them and go, I will speak to what I know is right. Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. He saves my soul. He can save your soul. He loves you. We testify to those things. So I think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they stood up for a number of reasons. One, they realized there was one God. There can't be 5, 6, and they can't all lead to the same place. 2, they realized that they had a strong enough character to do what was right when the wrong thing was easy. Because we've all been there. When the wrong thing is easy, the hard thing is the hard thing to do. I have this conversation with my son on a regular basis. Son, that's the easy thing to do. Now, what's the hard thing to do? What's the thing that you need to do in life? Well, I have to do this. Okay. Then let's do that. And I think their eyes were on the eternal. That is, they looked beyond what was right in front of them. And I think we become very guilty of going after the here and now, going after the thing that makes you feel good, instead of looking out and going, Jesus Christ has promised a heaven, eternal salvation is out there. And so the decision I make today matters. The decision I make tomorrow with my family matters, because there is eternity on the line. And we need to stop looking at what's right in front of us and go, well, that makes me happy. When you die, it's going to be a whole new ball game. So let's think further down the line. And I think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did. They looked way down the line, and they knew that we're talking about eternal things here. And so I cannot bow before another God. And 5, I think they wanted a clear conscience when they stood before God. I know I do, and I hope y'all do. I know I can't get there. I know I cannot get a clear conscience because I know the sins I've done in my life, and I know the things I've done, but I know that God has offered salvation. He's offered grace. And so as a result of that, now I get to make decisions that are for God. And so my conscience from the time I accepted Christ until the time I die is, do I want a clear conscience? And when I fail, I know I lean on grace that much more. I think in our world where we have 1,000 voices attacking us and going after us, we have to learn to focus in and have an unshaken dependency on God. Because if we don't, it's easy to move people just a little bit at a time. And you're seeing this every day on the news. Good causes out there, but they're going crazy. Bad things are happening because people are just a little bit at a time going away from God. So we see in verse 17 and 18, he says, if that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. He will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image in which you have set up. See, they believed no matter what, no matter what, they believed that God was going to save them in some capacity. Notice he didn't say God's going to completely pull us out of the fire. That's going to be the way. He just said, God's going to save us, and we will not bow down to your God. No way, no how, that's not going to happen. I think a lot of times when we approach God from a standpoint of, well, God, I'll serve you if. I'll come to church if. I want this, but God, I really have to have you do this for me. And that's just not the way it works. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had it right. God will deliver no matter what. He's either going to pull me out of the fire, or or I get to go see him. But either way, I'm delivered. Paul does a good job of that in Philippians, where he talks about, if I die, good. If I live, good. I get to go on preaching. Either way, I'm content. Job does a good job of that. He talks about that so much in his life. See, the bottom line, they knew that they were going to be delivered from Nebuchadnezzar. Either way. And I guess my encouragement there is be content there. Sometimes we want God to answer I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we want God to answer prayers in a certain way, and that's just not the way it works sometimes. God's will is not your will. It needs to be a win-win in the area of God. If you want me to do this, so be it. If you don't, so be it. But either way, I'm going to be content with your will, God. We should have an unshaken dependency, just like Job did when he said, though he slayeth me, I will trust him. And Job went through if you've read Job, he went through some bad stuff. But throughout the whole thing, he's steadfast and faithful. Amazing story. If you haven't read that, go back and read it. We need to understand that faith is not like a rabbit foot. God is not a genie that we get to go, well, God, I have faith in you, so you should give me. God, I have faith in you, so you should provide for me. I shouldn't go through any trials. I shouldn't go through anything because, God, I believe in you. And that's just not the way it works. See, I want to point out that if Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't go into the fire, if they didn't go through the trouble, I wonder how many people would go to hell. I know one, Nebuchadnezzar, because at the end of this, he professes Jesus Christ, or God is the Most High God. And my guess is that thousands after him followed in suit and said, God is the Most High God, and got to receive Jesus Christ into their life. And they got to go to heaven as a result of 3 people honoring God and saying, I will not compromise. I'm going to lean on God no matter what. What a testimony. What amazing story that you can tell other people to say, be faithful. And that's what we're talking about, is being faithful, not for you, but for Jesus Christ. Being faithful when it's hard, being faithful because there's more on the line than just your life. A conversation I regularly have in my house is, don't be selfish. It bothers me. I don't like selfish people that think about themselves. And I think sometimes that's where we're getting as a society, is we're so focused on ourselves and we stop focusing on God and focusing on other people. I just want what's best for me. And that's the exact opposite of what God tells us is the priority. Priority number 1, love God. Priority number 2 is love others. There is no other way around that. He didn't say love yourself. He said love God, love others. And I think Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego understood love God above all else. And so they pursued him. And not only that, they never backed off of that. Samuel Rodcast says this in a poem, and it's a pretty long poem, so I pulled out one stanza. But it says, whatever my God ordains is right. In his love I am abiding. I will be still in all he does. I will follow where he is guiding. He is my God through the dark road. He holds me, and I shall not fail, and so him I leave it all. See, our world has 1,000 voices telling you what to do, but there's only one truth. There's only one voice that we should listen to. It doesn't always lead where you want it to lead, because he knows what's the most valuable thing that you can do with your life. He knows the most valuable thing for his kingdom. And that's, if we had to pick another theme, it would be, this is the kingdom of God that's at hand. We're dealing with three people that understood there is an undeniable deliverance when we focus on God. They understood this deliverance comes through God, nobody else. Verse 24 and 25 says, Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men into the midst of the fire? And they answered and said to the king, True, O king. Look, he answered, I see 4 men walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the 4th one looks like the Son of God. Man, that's powerful. When these 3 men needed him the most, God shows up. He knew what they needed at that moment. He knew what was the most valuable thing that his kingdom could see. He allowed them to go into the furnace. And that's something I want you to pay attention to. He didn't pull them out before. He didn't stop it. He could have stopped it way back there when the whole idol was being built. Solved a lot of problems for him. But he didn't. He allowed them to go through it. He allowed them to go into the furnace. 2 Timothy chapter 4, 16 through 18 says, At my first offense, no one stood with me, but all forsook me. May it be charged against them, but the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, so that the message might be preached fully through me and through all Gentiles may hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion, and the Lord will deliver me from the evil work and preserve me for the heavenly kingdom. To him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. And then 1 Peter chapter 1 says, All praise to God, the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ. It is by his great mercy that we have been born again, because God raised Jesus Christ from the dead. Now we live with great expectation. We have a priceless inheritance, an inheritance that is kept in heaven for you, pure and undefiled, beyond the reach of change and decay. And through your faith, God is protecting you by his power until you receive salvation, which is already revealed in the last days. So be truly glad, this wonderful joy ahead. Even though you must endure many trials for a little while, these trials will show your faith is genuine. It is being tested as a fire test and purifies gold. Through the faith is far more precious than gold. So when faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory to honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world. A little over 700 years ago, there's another man by the name of John Huss. He was a priest in Czechoslovakia. And he understood those words that were read. He understood that there will be challenges, there's going to be perseverance, and he understood the value of the gospel. Like I said, he was a Catholic priest, and he stood up for the corrupt practices that were happening in the Catholic Church at the time. John was arrested, he was tried, he was convicted, and he was sentenced to death. He was kept in prison for 7 months. And finally, the day arrived that he was going to be convicted or hung or burned in this case. So on July 6, 1415, nearly 2,000 years after Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they placed a paper cup on his head, a mock crown. They drew figures on it, and they had the inscription, Here is a heretic. But here's what I want you to catch. As they brought the ropes up, and they tied him up, and they put the chains around his hands and his feet, he didn't whimper. He didn't cry out. As they took his all the kindling and they built it up around him and they stuffed all the hay underneath him to get him ready to burn at the stake, he didn't cry. And when the Duke of Bavaria looked at him and says, Renounce your error or die, he didn't give up. He didn't change. Huss just simply said this, In the truth of the gospel, which I have written, taught, and preached, I die willingly and joyfully today. And then they started the fire, and as the red tongues of the flame, driven by the wind, rose higher and higher around his body, Huss began to sing, Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God, have mercy on me. And as the smoke was coming around him and building up everywhere, the flames are encircling around his head, his voice comes out, Thou that take away the sins of the world, have mercy on me, God. The flames wrap around him, and his head falls to his chest, and the work is done. He's dead. Faith. He knew what he believed. He was uncompromising. He wouldn't back off, and he knew what the gospel said. I don't know why God didn't deliver this man and he did 3 other people. I don't know why. I don't know why countless people over the years have been martyred for the sake of the kingdom. I don't know why he saved some and why he doesn't. I don't know why some people have this life and others are burdened with this life. I don't know those answers. But what I do know is this, that God offers salvation, and that's the most important thing that we can ever receive in our life. God offers us hope. And he has a message for every single one of us to take into the world, and that's not always going to be easy. I think sometimes we get to a place in our life where we're scared to deliver the message, and we're scared to talk about it, and we're scared to do what's right because we have allowed the world to seep into our faith, and we don't have a pure faith anymore. I think we're scared of the valleys, that the shadows rise up, and we're scared of that, and we don't want to face those because we forget what he says in Psalms. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. And you look in 2 Timothy, he says, but the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed and all the Gentiles might hear it. Church, stand faithful. In our world where there's so many voices telling you how to live and what to do and how to act, read the Word of God. Pray to God. Have him show you the way. The words of people out there don't matter. The only thing that matters is right here. Focus in on Jesus Christ. Grab the hold of him and allow him to be your guide. Allow him to give you strength when you know what's right and you know what God's calling you to do. And you go, God, I don't want to do it. Grab a hold of him and hold on. Because, man, it's a good ride. Lots of good stuff happens. Lots of hard times come. But man, what can God do with your life if you gave it to him? You surrender it all. Who could you lead to Jesus? There are plenty of people out there to follow. There's plenty of people out there that have magical words and they make you feel good. But none of them there's very few are truth. Very few of them line up with action. A lot of people talk. Very few are action. I don't know about you, but I want to follow a God that proved it by dying on the cross for me. I don't want to follow a God that just spoke. I want to follow a God that gave it up. That come and lived the life. That come and stood and fought the powers. And he stood at the cross and said, I'll take it all. I do know one thing about Huss. I do know one thing he experienced. An undeniable deliverance from fear and from persecution of this world. He got to enter into the kingdom of God. He got to enter into heaven, and God got to go, well done, good and faithful servant. Chaz, if you want to go ahead and head up. Isaiah 43 says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, these shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you. When life puts you in the furnace, who are you going to grab a hold of? When you're called upon to take a stand for your family or for yourself, who are you going to hold on to? Revelation 2:10 says, do not fear any of these things which you're about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw you into some kind of prison that you may be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful to death, and I will give you the crown of life. And 1,000 voices are screaming at you to do this. Hold on to the one true voice of God. Be uncompromising in your dedication to him. Be unshaken in your dependency on him. As we offer an invitation every week, an opportunity for you to surrender, not to the church, not to me, anybody else, it's to God. An opportunity for you to come and say, I need prayer. An opportunity for you to say, I need to give my life back to Jesus. I need to give my life to Jesus. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that every one of us, or at least the majority of us, have taken. I took it when I was 17 years old. I walked down the aisle, gave my life, and then Jim baptized me back there, right there. And honestly, I didn't have a clue what I was getting myself into. I just knew that I had to go. I then knew that I had to give it all. And every day, I told my small group this morning. I had a conversation down there in my office this morning at 5:30 going, God, I need to talk. Because I'm broken a little bit here. I'm struggling in my faith. Can you lead me? Can you show me? And it comes back every time, Herman, be steadfast. Don't give in. Church, don't give in. Hold steadfast to God and say, God, lead me. The worst thing we can do is walk out the door and act like everything's normal, because it's not normal. And we know 2020 is far from normal, but the world is not normal. The only thing we have that we can hold on to that is truth and life is God. And to walk out the door and deny that is just senseless. You're asking to send yourself to hell. This makes no sense to me. So we'll offer an invitation. It's your choice. If you want to come down the aisle, talk, awesome. If you want to wait till afterwards and talk, awesome. You want to go to the back and grab an elder will go back there with you and pray, great. But don't leave today going, I should have, because the opportunity is here. Would you please stand and sing with us?